I'm Scott L. Miller. This is my life living in Nicaragua. Today we're going to do another video where we dive into some of the information you need to know to be able to make basic orders for getting internet hooked up. I know we covered this a bit, but it's amazing how often the basic names of things, just things you need to know to be able to discuss internet as far as telling people what you have, comparing, finding out what's available and so forth, is not something that people are aware of. When you're coming from a single market and you haven't dealt with it in other places, you often learn common phrases, or you get away with things because there isn't any variety, and when you move to a new place, everything changes, and the terms we often misuse or skip over can be really critical. We find a lot of that with people moving abroad, right? I've moved all over the world, and each place has the same technology, but the way that people refer to it and your ability to identify it and understand it is often curtailed. So it's important to understand some basics. We're going to go over those things so you have some fundamentals. We're going to explain right after the bump. I have some other videos that talk about ordering internet and things you need to know as an expat looking to get internet living abroad. I'm here in Nicaragua, but these things apply everywhere. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the media, because amazingly people are very confused about the available media. This is true even in the US. I talk to Americans who are getting internet in their own hometown and they have no idea what to look for or what to say, and they often end up being taken advantage of because of this. And we've noticed in the WhatsApp forums that people will try to explain what internet they have had, what experiences they're having, and the way that they describe it is often very, very wrong, to a point where we cannot determine what they've done right, wrong, if things are fast, slow, working, not working, expensive, not. We have no idea, because they lack the terminology to be able to express what they have, and even by description aren't able to do so in many cases. So a little bit of this is really important. Okay, so first of all, there's three separate contexts we're going to talk about. One we're going to knock out right away, and that is I have a cell phone and I'm getting internet on that, right? That is cell service. When we say I'm getting internet, that's not what anyone means. Yes, that is internet on your phone. And you're absolutely correct to say I have internet on my, that is true. And when you're getting that, we say you're getting internet for your cell phone. If you say internet is available at a location, meaning like a house or a business or a structure, that never under any circumstances refers to your cell phone. You can always have cell phone no matter where you are, out on the road, blah, blah, places you don't live. That's great. There are two carriers here in Nicaragua. There's Tigo and Claro. That's all you need to know, your cell phone. When we're talking about getting internet for your home, for, signing up for internet, it will never under any circumstances refer to that phone. We'll call that cell service, right? So, or you might call it phone service, but it's better to call it cell service because there are still phones. Now, when you're getting internet for a location, for your house or your business, there are two contexts here. One is the networking inside your house. We should never refer to this as the internet, because the internet stops when it touches your house. Inside your house is your network, right? But a lot of people are going to mistakenly call it things, so be prepared. But when we're talking about it, when you're having a meaningful conversation, never refer to the network inside your house as the internet. That would be like referring to your driveway as the highway. Yes, it's all things that your car drives on, but people will be super confused if you say the highway's closed and you mean you're retopping your driveway, right? They mean different things. So when you say, oh, I'm not allowed to do something on the highway, but you are allowed in your driveway, or you say, something's not working, people need to know where you're talking about. And highways are outside, they're public. The internet is public. Inside your house, that's not the internet. It's kind of like when you receive mail. Mail is going from one post office to the other. Once it's inside your house and sitting on the table, it's not actually mail, it's a letter, right? Those are important differentiations when you're trying to do diagnostics or figure out what things should cost what or how fast it should be. You can't mix those things up. If you're just casually saying my internet's not working today and you mean that the network in your house isn't, and you can't get to the internet because your network isn't working, okay, you're just blowing people off or just telling them that it doesn't work, whatever, that works out. But it's very confusing because the moment they're like, oh, I can help you, oh, it turns out they can't because they have misinformation. So you want to be careful with that just in general. But your home network has two types of reasonable connections available to you in the real world. One is Ethernet. This is the cable that you run in your house. Most people never use these, but most people should. This is how you get your fastest, most stable connections inside your house, and you want to use it whenever you can. Technical people will put this in all over the place because it makes their house run better and more smoothly and requires less upkeep. But non-technical people have a tendency to perceive it as being a negative and so avoid it. So it's one of those things that often the more complicated thing is done by the non-technical people simply because it's perceived better. So typically you want to plug in as much as possible for Ethernet. This is how you want to plug in anything that's going to be used as a phone. You want to plug in desktops or anything that's not going to move around. Your televisions that are hanging on the wall, they will work better if they're plugged in. Anything like that is going to benefit from being plugged into Ethernet for two reasons. One is, like I said, the Ethernet is faster and more stable, but also everything that you put on Ethernet doesn't have to go on the alternative being Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is used inside your house. It's how everything connects, right? Wi-Fi is a technology, a very, very specific technology that uses a very specific signal standard. There is no gray area. There is absolutely no ambiguity. You cannot use Wi-Fi to refer to anything but this very specific set of technologies. And Wi-Fi is used to connect your cell phone, to connect your laptop, to connect many desktops these days. Anything that isn't wired in through Ethernet, all your televisions on the wall that you didn't plug in, they're going to have to use Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is very similar to the technology on that Ethernet cable, except it's like one Ethernet cable shared by the house rather than one for every device. And for every device that uses the Wi-Fi in your house or your property, they compete for resources on that Wi-Fi. So 2 or 3 things, it doesn't cause a problem. But you start having a lot of guests over, a lot of people are using it, a lot of different devices are connected and sometimes doing things, it can quite often actually start to have noticeable performance impacts. And you can mitigate that by simply moving to more Ethernet. So that's one of the technical people tend to put in a lot of Ethernet in their houses because things just work better, especially because we tend to offer things inside our house. We're going to do a video on how to use Jellyfin inside your house, and that's a great example of how you can get really big bandwidth and do amazing things inside your house. And if you're doing it all over Wi-Fi, you might notice. And if you're doing it compared to like when your internet is actually saturated and it works perfectly, it really helps show you where things are working, right? So inside the house, you want to use Ethernet when you can, but we have this thing called Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi is generally designed for this in-the-house connection. It's meant for relatively short distances. Now, it's a general-purpose technology. Just like Ethernet, you can use it wherever, but that's where it's really designed to be used, and that's how people think of it. Now, because people connect quite often, the average person never plugs into Ethernet. They're just going into someone's house and they're getting the Wi-Fi password. They start to misassociate that connection inside the house, just connecting from your handheld device, your phone, your TV, your laptop, to the house's network. And the only thing we tend to use that for is to then get to the internet. We tend to associate it with the internet in very inappropriate ways. Never use the term Wi-Fi to refer to the internet. They are absolutely discrete things that never can be mislabeled, right? There is no association between the two other than one can be, under some circumstances, used as the mode for getting to the other. Just like the public highway system is a system of roads outside your driveway, but your driveway and garage are not the highway. Do not use one to refer to the other. Even though you may go down your driveway to get to the highway, you may also go down to your driveway to get to your mailbox and come home. If you go down, if you say, my Wi-Fi is down, you are telling people that the connection between your house and the end of the driveway is not working, right? Somewhere between your mailbox and your garage door is broken. That's what it means when you say the Wi-Fi is down. Black and white, no question. Right, so you go, my Wi-Fi is not working. Someone goes, okay, have you rebooted the little device that gives you Wi-Fi? Why would I do that, right? Because you just told them that that's the thing that's not working, right? It's just a radio. It's just a little box, and there's a lot of different forms of it. Maybe it has antennas. Maybe the antennas are inside. It's just a little box that broadcasts radio waves inside your house, and you connect to it. Okay? So when you say that it's down, you're being extremely informative. You want to make sure that that's correct, because you almost never say my Ethernet's down, because it never really goes down. The Wi-Fi inside your house almost never fails. Now, what you may have is I wandered too far from where my Wi-Fi is and it's no longer working. That's something you can address with something else, right? So a house like mine, I have 4 Wi-Fi. They're called access points. They're the radio devices that give an area of coverage, because we're talking about wireless here, right? So to cover a large area, to cover the yards and stuff, we really need to have 6 where we are, like, to really get good coverage. They can only go so far, they can only go through so many walls and so forth. And we notice, even with 4 of them in a house of this size, that some of the far points of the house really struggle to just be able to watch movies, whereas other parts are amazingly good because we have very good internet to bring the movies from the outside. So typically the Wi-Fi units are hooked up through Ethernet. Right? We can do another video if people need it. Why anything called an extender should be immediately shut down. Do not ever deploy something called an extender. You need to really know what you're doing. Extenders destroy networks. Just be aware it is not a logical thing to want to do under normal circumstances. That is not something that you get for a house. And mesh almost never applies to something in your house. These are very explicit technical terms, and they generally lead to bad results if you don't know exactly what you're doing. Stick to normal, everyday Wi-Fi access points when doing stuff inside your house. Trust me, that is the difference between people who have no problems at all and people who have continuous problems and can't figure out why. But use these terms. If you don't know what a term means, make sure you use a term that you do know what it means, right? Tell the thing that's not working. Don't come up with, well, I heard some words and this is the one, because this is how we end up with just tons of time and not being able to fix things, or giving people misinformation, right? Oh, my Wi-Fi's slow. Is it? That seems really unlikely. Your Wi-Fi should be many times the speed of your internet, right? Anything inside your house should be super fast. If your Wi-Fi is super slow, why not go spend $30, $40 and make it super fast? We're confused why you haven't fixed that. Oh, because that's not the real issue. Okay, important not to say that that's the issue. So those are the connections for inside your house. Your house has its own network where you can transfer information around. It does its own thing. The house then uses what's called a router or a firewall. A lot of people are going to call it your firewall. Some people are going to call it a modem. That's not quite accurate. There's a little bit of technical here, but there is an access point in which the outside world comes through to get to your house, and everything comes through one point, right? And that is technically your firewall/router. They're always the same thing. And up to that point, you're getting the internet. It's called the ISP connection, right? The line from the internet provider comes into that point, and that device provides it to the rest of your house, right? Because your whole house shares one internet connection. So you have to have a device that takes that interconnection and provides it to the house, right? That's what the router is for. So your house can have 100 devices in it or 1. It doesn't matter. You have to have this device. And then you have this internet connection that you're paying for, right? Your home network, you should never be paying for. Right? You have to buy the gear, but it's yours, right? Just like your driveway. You don't pay a monthly lease on a driveway that you installed, right? It's your driveway, right? But to get on a toll road, you got to pay to get on the toll road, right? It's not your toll road. You're just using it. That's how the internet connection works, right? You got to pay an internet provider every month to get internet access. So that comes in 4 different flavors. One is fiber. And the other main one is copper, or we call it cable, or copper cable, right? So those are your main media for receiving internet from the outside. And those are the lines that run up to your house and actually plug in. They come down on the poles, right? And they come into the house one way or another. One is not better than the other. Typically, good providers lean towards fiber and poorer providers lean towards copper cable, but those are just tendencies. Both of them can do an amazing job. Either of them can do a terrible job depending on the quality of your internet provider. The actual fact that one is made out of glass and one is made out of copper actually doesn't matter. It truly doesn't. It's one of those things like which is heavier, a pound of lead or a pound of feathers? No, they're both a pound. Fiber and copper are like that. They're 2 different materials. We associate incorrect things with one or the other, and we think one must be faster, that the name just must make it faster. Anything made out of lead must be heavier than any amount of feathers, but it is not true. It is the speed is the only thing that matters. There's never a time that fiber versus cable actually matters as a media. It only matters the quality and speed of the service delivered over it. Okay? Very important, because that is one of the tricks that people play constantly. And even if, as I say this, 50% of my viewers will be, but I'm sure the one is faster than the other, because the name, no, it cannot mean that. Speed is speed. Which is faster? A Ferrari going 50 miles an hour or a Pinto going 50 miles an hour? They both go 50 miles an hour. But the Ferrari could go fast. It could go faster. Maybe, but it's not. They're locked to 50 miles an hour. That's what matters. One is not faster than the other. It looks faster. It sounds faster. Granted, but it is not. It is all an illusion. So those are the two main. You want those because that is a wire running into your house or cable of some sort. If you can't get those, if you're in a position where those are not available, there is a dramatic lesser technology. I guess there's 5 technologies we're going to talk about, not 4. There's a lesser technology that is the next tier down. This is the best you can get if those aren't available as far as media is concerned. And that is, and this is where people get confused, Wi-Fi. You never, let's be clear, it is not plausible that you would ever desire Wi-Fi. If you've ever heard of a person who said, I gotta go get Wi-Fi for my house, they don't know what they're talking about. They are throwing words around to sound cool, right? That's a very dangerous thing to do, because if you go to a provider and say you want Wi-Fi, to them that is the cheapest thing that they can do for you. They want to hear those words because they're going to give you the worst possible service. They know that you don't know what you're doing, and they've got you because you've demanded from them the thing that they want to trick you into buying, right? There is no condition under which you want Wi-Fi. You fall back to it when there's no better option, copper or fiber. Those are solid medias. Wi-Fi means they're taking the kind of stuff you use inside the house, putting a better antenna on it, sticking it on a pole, and putting another pole, it doesn't need to be like a big pole, it could be attached to a window or something, on your house, and hoping nothing gets in between the two, hoping there's not too much rain, hoping the wind doesn't knock the antennas around, and with all of that, like, let's hope a branch doesn't get in the way, let's hope a person doesn't stand away, let's hope a bird doesn't fly in the way, and hopefully over a distance that's not too far, this will work well enough to beam information to your house. And under many conditions, it does work reasonably well. But it'll never work as well as that same provider giving you copper or fiber. Those are sensible connections. The Wi-Fi connection is an emergency fallback when nothing else is available. It's the, well, okay, I guess we can live with that. And there are ways to make it work okay, but there's no way to make it as good. Not possible. So you never want it because it's much more prone to failure, it's not as fast, and it's really problematic, and it's often very difficult to install. It requires tons more expertise to get less. So if you have to, it's fine. And here in Nicaragua, it's one of the reasons that other things don't exist is because we have a really good coverage of Wi-Fi. And I have run Wi-Fi ISPs. I am very aware of how this works. I have been the head of engineering for multiple Wi-Fi-based ISPs that provide these kinds of things to rural parts of the U.S. where nobody has good internet, right? These are the things you do when you're in the wilderness and, well, we want to put nice houses in the wilderness and no one's going to pay to run a wire to them. This is what you do, right? So we have this technology, and it's a wonder that we have this technology. It's amazing. But you don't want it. So be very cautious. You never go out and say, I want Wi-Fi. What you go out and say is, I would like internet to my house. And they say, oh, we have copper or we have fiber. No one has both. And that's what you want, right? And if they say there's no copper, there's no fiber available from any carrier to your house, but there's Wi-Fi, then okay, you can talk Wi-Fi. But like 50% of people actually go out and request Wi-Fi instead of a good quality internet connection, and then tell the stories of all the problems that they have. And remember, the other thing that can happen is people get confused, and of course you don't want that, so and often the carrier that they go to doesn't offer it, and so they're like, do you mean Wi-Fi inside your house? And then they'll sell you anything. And they'll give you an access point, and they'll charge you an arm and a leg for something that only cost between $30 and $80 to buy, and they'll charge you $20 a month to rent one because they saw you coming. You don't go to an internet provider and get equipment for your network. You go to a Best Buy or you go to a computer store. Here in Nicaragua, they're everywhere, right? Just go buy a wireless access point, and now you can plug it in to your router, and you have Wi-Fi for your house, right? This is very easy. It's just a little device. It's your network, right? But if you go to an ISP, you go to Tigo, you go to Claro, you go to someone like that and say, I want Wi-Fi, weird things are going to happen, right? There's no good scenario that comes from that unless you absolutely know what you're doing. What are the other technologies? If you can't get Wi-Fi, there are yet worse options that you could potentially get. One is satellite. Now, here in Nicaragua, we don't have any official satellite offered. Neither the satellite companies officially offer anything, nor are any legally available in the country. But some people get it to work. You might be able to use that. In some countries, that works decently well. In some, it doesn't. It's all over the place. But satellite, by its very nature, is not as good as the more terrestrial types of technology, right? Fiber, copper, and even Wi-Fi. So it's a step down on the technology. There's also, as another fallback, you can, in some cases, in some jurisdictions, there are offerings for your house using the phone technology, but not your phone, the technology that's used in the phone, right? So we say 4G or 5G or LTE, depending on where you are, which one. Those are different types of signaling of phone internet. Those are going to be the slowest, the hardest to use, the most limits. It's just, that's the ultimate in fallback if nothing else is available. Sometimes you put an antenna so you get better connection on your roof. It still connects to a router. All these things, no matter whether it's a satellite or Wi-Fi or copper or fiber or a phone connection, it still has to connect to a router and be provided to your house. Your house doesn't know. Your phone inside the house, your TV inside the house, your computer inside the house, none of them know what your internet connection is. They know what they're connected to. They talk to a router. The router takes them off to the internet via whatever you provide. They know if it's fast or slow, that's it. They don't know what it is. They can't know what it is. So that's how it works. And these are the media terms you need to know so that you can make basic decisions. Because when you're looking at a house and you say, is internet available here? If that's all you ask, people are just going to check their phone, say, I've got service. Ha ha. They're not really checking, right? Why would they? Or if you ask, is Wi-Fi available here? If they're being honest, they're going to answer on something that doesn't matter to you. What you care about is fiber or copper available here? And from what providers? Right? And if that's not available, then are you okay falling back to Wi-Fi? If so, what provider is available? And is anyone available? Right? And so forth. Work down the list, but figure out what matters to you. Most people are jumping around and asking meaningless questions or semi-meaningless questions, or injecting information into it, demanding Wi-Fi when they don't intend to, right? And then getting answers that are not what they think they are. And that's really dangerous, right? You think you asked one question, you actually asked another. Even if you think that they know what you mean, and this is the excuse everyone gives, well, they know what I mean. Quite often they do not. They have no way to know for certain, and especially when you transition from the US, where there's a bunch of, we use terms like Wi-Fi to mean anything, and then you come to a place where people know what Wi-Fi is, and it's broadly available, and people worry about getting stuck with it all the time. If you ask for it, they're going to assume that you've checked other things, or you got a better price on that, and that's what you want. It's not going to occur to them that you're using this as a convention to mean not Wi-Fi. Right? That would be super weird. And it would be super condescending for them to just assume that you were doing that. They would think you were crazy. So if you're going to use those terms in a way that are commonly misused in the United States, in another country, it can run into big problems because they just don't have the same conventions, right? They don't perceive the words in the same way. And if we were to try to explain, oh no, we use Wi-Fi to mean copper internet, the exact opposite, they'd be like, so you specifically asked for the opposite of what you wanted? How are we supposed to figure that out, right? It would not make any sense to them. But to an American, you'd actually be like, and they will argue for it. That completely makes sense. You can tell from the context. Actually, they can't, right? And Americans talking to other Americans often are like, oh, I know what you mean. But you try to get it, you separate them and ask specifically what they meant, they rarely get the same answer, right? They do not actually have the ability to communicate. They're mostly just not communicating, and it turns out in many of the cases we don't need to. We just kind of don't do anything with the information, but that's really what's happening. So understanding that media and those terms, there's not that many, and it's all very straightforward, but understanding that these are discrete terms, there is no gray area on how to use them, and misusing them will almost certainly lead to big mistakes. You can protect yourself quite a bit simply by knowing those terms. So thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Alan Miller. As always, watch another episode, share on social media, tell someone about the show. Our GoFundMe for Marcella is working again. So if you gave in the past, please go and re-give. The money was refunded. You can just give it back. It really does work now. We've worked with GoFundMe to get this actually working. It's been very stressful, but it is okay, taken care of. And really appreciate everyone who's been giving. If you haven't given yet, now you can do so. We told everyone to wait. Now it's free and clear to do that. And of course, I will see all of you tomorrow.